This is Poppy and Rye Chapter 23. It's called The Rescue Begins. "How do we get into the lodge?" Curly Dock asked after Poppy had given him and Thistle a lesson in how to use the quills. "We can swim. Can you?" "Not really," Poppy admitted. "When I went to the lodge before, I floated on a wood chip." "The beavers leave all kinds of chips around," Thistle said. "I'm sure we could find one big enough and carry the three of us." The trio crept down from the edge of the pond. A few beavers were about working. "Don't let them see us," Poppy warned. Squatting down, the mice attempted to hide behind the bushes. Only when Poppy was sure they were unnoticed did she and the others scout about in search of a chip. Thistle found one near a recently chewed stump. All agreed that the thin, square flake would be large enough to carry the three of them. Quickly, they dragged it behind a bush and hid it. Then they searched out wood bits to use as paddles, and then they returned to the top of the hill. "Better get some rest," Poppy suggested. "As soon as it gets dark, we'll go." As far as she was concerned, all was ready, but the mice had been observed. Clara Canad saw them sniffing about the edges of the pond. Suspicious, she had watched intently, but was not certain what the mice were doing. She reported what she had seen to Mr. Canad. "What do you think?" she asked of him. "Don't know," he replied. "Don't want to make a mountain out of a mouse hill. Still, you might have a point. Give them an inch and the mice take a mile." The mice were looking for something. "What do you think it was?" Mr. Canad asked. "I'm not sure. Did you block the vent hole?" "Piece of cake." "Did you make another?" "Needle and haystack. But look here, sweetheart. The less trouble, the better. We've been coasting along easy. We don't want to slip on banana peels now. So if you want to keep watch, as far as I'm concerned, that's just frosting on the cake." With that, Mr. Canad swam away. "Well, I don't like it," Clara said to herself. "I'm going to patrol the pond tonight." The farewells Thistle and Curly Dock made to their families that night were brief and painful. The elder mice tried to be kind, but all they could do was little and hide their apprehension. For their part, the youngsters tried to appear bold, but felt very uneasy. Poppy, uncomfortable with the family disapproval, kept away entirely. When it was dark, the three mice went down to the pond. The vine hung on a coil around Poppy's neck like a life preserver. Once they located the wood chip that they had hidden, they pushed it into the water and jumped on. In moments, they were afloat, moving slowly towards the lodge. The three mice knelt on a wood chip and paddled steadily. Thistle and Curly Dock were up front, and Poppy was in the rear. Now and again, she stood tall and peered into the dark, trying to keep them on course. The beaver's main lodge, though visible, was distant. "To the left," she called. "To the right." Thistle and Curly Dock shifted their paddles accordingly. Other than the normal night sounds, all was quiet. The moon was slipping in and out behind the clouds. A breeze from the north had begun to blow, bringing early hints of the autumn yet to come. It made a pond's surface choppy. Thistle's whisper voice broke through the dark. "I think I heard something." The mice stopped paddling. Poppy's ear twitched. She was not sure, but she too had caught a faint, splashing sound off to her left. The noise, however, did not return. "I think we're all right," she called, keeping her voice low, and the three resumed their paddling. As they approached the lodge, Curly Dock whispered, "Is that it?" "I'm pretty sure," Poppy replied. "Which side should we aim for?" Thistle wanted to know. "It doesn't matter," Poppy said. "We'll be crawling to the vent hole on the top. Let's go. Keep your voices low." They dipped their paddles and moved forward again. Even as they did, a great swell of water lifted their raft, causing their backsides as if they were rolling down a hill. The next moment, Clara Canad, orange teeth glowing, rose up before them. "I thought I'd heard something," she barked. "What are you doing here? What are you trying to do?" "Back paddle!" Poppy yelled frantically and plunged her oar deep into the water as if she could scoop them clear. Thistle tried too, but with no more success. Worse, when she hauled back to the strain, her paddle snapped in two. Curly Dock, working frantically, only stirred the foaming oars. When the raft rocked wildly, Thistle slipped. She did manage to hang on to the tips of her paws, but her hold was precarious. Curly Dock, seeing her danger, attempted to reach before her, but lost a step on the listing raft and flipped over her head into the water. "Curly Dock!" Thistle screamed. She twisted to see where she had gone, and he had vanished. Clara, meanwhile, swung herself completely around and lifted her tail. "Look out!" Poppy cried. Poppy saw Thistle attempt to draw her quill. It caused her to lose her grip, and she fell back into the water and disappeared. As the beaver's tail struck, Poppy clung to the raft. The tail hit the raft's front end, causing it to flip over like a catapult and flinging Poppy into the air. As she flew, she spread her legs wide, landing in the water with a belly and a splat. Stunned, she lay face down in the water. It was the vine still around her neck which kept her from drowning. Clara looked around. Seeing Poppy face down in the water, she assumed she was dead. As for the other 2 mice, she did not see them all. She was sure they, too, had perished. With a satisfied grunt, the beaver dove beneath the water and headed for the entryway of the lodge. Poppy, regaining consciousness, looked up. Giving her head a shake, she spat out water and called, "Thistle! Curly Dock!" Her voice was weak, and there was no reply. She looked about. The beaver's lodge rose up before her. Giving a few feeble kicks, she moved close enough to reach out and grab hold of some of its branches. When she pulled at them, she came up against it. There she rested some more until her wind was completely restored. Only then did she crawl out of the water and into the lodge. Turning, she gazed back over the pond. "Thistle!" she called again. "Curly Dock!" She thought she heard an answering cry, but it did not repeat itself. She was sure her young friends had drowned. Drenched and forlorn, Poppy sat down, toying with the circle of the vine by her side. Suddenly, she reached for a quill. It, too, was gone. That meant she had no way to defend herself. Everything bad that could have happened had. What should she do? She told herself. She was to go back and inform Valerian and Clover what had occurred. The mere thought of that made her groan. Why did she always have to bring bad news? It was all too ghastly. The next moment she realized that was not going to be possible. Her raft had gone. She could swim to shore. There was little choice but to press on and attempt to save Rye, somehow. Poppy hefted the circle of vine. Though heavy, she flung it back over her neck and began to climb the side of the lodge. As she went, she began to cry. Why did Ragweed have to die? Why did Rye have to run away? Why did Erith and Clover and Valerian have to be angry at her? Why did Thistle and Curly Dock have to drown? Was everything her fault? It was all too much. Despite her anguish, Poppy continued up the side of the lodge. It was hard to climb. Her own distress, the rough nature of the lodge's construction, her sense of failure, all conspired to make the going difficult. Even so, she kept climbing constantly, slipping, banging her head, her knees, her paws grew raw. More than once, she had to stop and regain her breath as well as her composure. But up she went, crawling on, over, under, around twigs, sticks, and logs, all while slipping and sliding over mud that stuck to her like glue. Sometimes the agony of it all made her whimper. And then, when she finally reached the top, she could not find the vent hole. She could hardly believe it. Back and forth over the top she crawled. All she found was mud and more mud. Something was wrong, altered. Gradually, Poppy began to gasp at what might have happened. When she had visited Rye, she had left the vine dangling from the vent hole. The beavers must have discovered what she had done and covered the hole with mud. And if that was true, it certainly seemed to be so, then short of swimming, there was no way for her to get inside the lodge. Feeling defeated and alone, Poppy sat at the top of a lodge. Erith had fled back to Dimwood. Thistle and Curly Dock were gone, presumably drowned. Rye was imprisoned. Rye, how close he was, how impossible to reach. Her whole plan was a disaster. Poppy laid back and stared at the few stars peeking out now and again from behind the drifting clouds. I might as well be up there for all I can do, she thought. Exhaustion, fueled by sorrow and defeat, took hold. She kept telling herself she mustn't sleep, that she must do something. But her fatigue, mixed with all her melancholy state, proved too powerful, so she nodded off.